We've seen the gadgets become real. Communicators became flip phones. Those tablets, basically the forefather to the iPad. And of course...
Computer, identify malfunction immediately.
Alexa, give me the news.
You could say that the tech was inspired by Star Trek, or maybe the show's creator Gene Roddenberry was just really good at predicting what was to come. But here's the thing, the show wasn't just about technology, it was about us, as we and society evolve.
When we one day can have a replicator that can literally make anything we want, need and poverty becomes a thing of the past.
50 years ago, there was not a whole lot of diversity on television back then. They featured the first interracial kiss.
For Star Trek, science is the way to approach and understand the smallness of humans and of human civilization, set against the backdrop of the immensity of the heavens.
What set Star Trek apart from other science fiction was optimism, a future where Earth is a utopia, income inequality and discrimination, ancient history. But here, in Stardate 2019, half a century after the show first aired, and we're still debating racism, bigotry, even climate change. So it makes you wonder, if Star Trek could lay down the blueprints for future tech, does it have anything to say about our politics?
It's all, to some degree, a mirror of what's happening here right now. It's easier to talk about aliens than it is to talk about our neighbors.
Over the decades, Star Trek has come a long way from Kirk and Spock. Today, Star Trek Discovery is a series millions are watching. Michelle Paradise is an executive producer.
At the time the original Star Trek came out, much like today, there's a lot to be worried about. We feel divided from one another. And, you know, Star Trek, they go out and they encounter difficulties and species and all of that, but always we can overcome and we can achieve and we can make that world a better place.
Okay, back to our world, to 2016, when America saw two very different political ideologies skyrocket. A new brand of nationalism and democratic socialism, and they couldn't be further apart. President Trump took the White House, and 2 years later, the Democratic Socialist Party sent its first two members to Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib. Clearly, the country was divided. A 2018 Gallup poll found that young voters actually had a more positive view of socialism than capitalism, while the president's approval rating stayed rock solid among his base. So with these two bitterly opposed economic philosophies on the rise, I wondered how Trekkies see all this shaking out.
I think people growing up in the 80s and 90s, like us, I think Star Trek had a tremendous impact on the way they look at the world.
It's pretty socialist. You've got replicators, you've got, I mean, people don't really need money anymore.
Yes. I mean, people use the S word all the time. But when you think about it, the characters in the show, in the universe, they don't use that word because it's irrelevant to them what it is.
Manu Saadia wrote the book on Star Trek economics. Literally. It's called Trekonomics. He really dives into the Starfleet implications of mastering almost any matter at the atomic level, detailing what happens to a society if machines called replicators can materialize anything you need.
The socialism in there is about public goods. All the necessities of life are available through replicators, and they're free. Holding on to wealth and holding on to your own piece of the pie no longer makes any sense.
In that future, what is valuable? If I can have a Ferrari, well, everyone can have a Ferrari. And I don't know if I want a Ferrari anymore because everyone can have a Ferrari. Value will go to personality, individuality, idea, and thought. That's going to be the only thing that can't be replicated.
So we've seen a bunch of pieces of technology come to fruition. We've got the communicator, that became the flip phone. Do you think that we've seen some political aspects of Star Trek come to fruition?
It's a work in progress. It's much easier to build gizmos than to change behaviors on society's scale.
Some of the politicians of today, I mean, they say they've been inspired by Star Trek.
Yes, Stacey Abrams, for instance. They grew up watching The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. These TV shows are all about trying to find a way to act in a just way in the universe.
And Stacey Abrams isn't an anomaly. AOC says she was inspired by Voyager's Captain Janeway. For a lot of young girls, it was the first time they saw a woman in charge. Even in the 60s, the original series challenged the public to think about representation in a new way. It featured a black woman, a Japanese man, a Russian guy, and the best Vulcan friend a captain could ever ask for, all working together to go where no man had gone before. But today, Star Trek Discovery is taking it a step further, challenging gender norms head-on with the show's main character, a human raised by Vulcans, a woman named Michael.
Tell me a little bit about how Star Trek sees gender roles.
I think it sees gender the same way it sees race, which is it shouldn't and doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if someone is alien or human or male or female. It matters, are you capable?
It's nice to see this world represented. I mean,
Yes.
some would argue that Star Trek helped pave the way.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the diversity of that cast. Women on the bridge, Lieutenant Uhura, running things, sciencing things at a time when that wasn't really what people saw a lot of on television.
Gene Roddenberry was the original creator of Star Trek back in 1966. His son Rod says, looking back now, he can see how his dad's politics might have helped shape our society today.
Do you think that Star Trek helped move the needle a little bit when it comes to human rights?
I do. I absolutely do. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a convention or traveling anywhere in the world and I meet someone and I get a story about how Star Trek helped change someone's life. It inspired them to get out of an abusive relationship, or they never were told they could be something, but now they're a doctor. Star Trek absolutely has significantly impacted the world. And it needs to keep doing that. I mean, it has to do that more than ever.
Another hallmark of Star Trek, astrophysics and science. But these days, even science itself seems up for debate.
I grew up with the Next Generation, and I love the idea of being on a starship that's out there purely to explore and to meet new civilizations. We learned to appreciate our differences and crave our differences because we knew that's how we grew and evolved intellectually as a species.
It's always been an inspiration for science, Star Trek, right? And now we see people saying space isn't real or the Earth is flat. I mean, what's that like?
I kind of don't know what to do with that. Frankly, we're facing global threats at the moment that science is raising a red flag to. Things like global warming, things like species loss. But one of the things that I truly love about Star Trek is that Star Trek takes those insurmountable things and embraces them. The world may not be what we want it to be just yet, but we can write it that way.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.